Hi guys, just a real quick and dirty one that I forgot to mention with you the other day is these rubber duck antennas. And there's just a little bit of basic 101 stuff, and I'm not an expert on this, so just passing on what I've learnt through hundreds of crashes. This is a 5.8 gigahertz antenna. I can tell that by the length of the element here. That should be 12.5 millimeters to about 13.8 millimeters. That's the standard length to run inside the 5.8 gigahertz band that's used by most video transmitters, such as this little guy here. Now, just to give you an idea, this thing works like that. That's how the signal's radiated. So you can see it's got a big dimple in here where it's probably close to zero. That's why you never ever point your antenna at your model. Your antenna, if you're going to use these things, should always be vertical, and your receiving antenna, which may be one of these things, right, should always be vertical. Again, even with these Fat Shark antennas and circular polarized antennas, they also have this kind of transmission pattern. There's always a dead spot in the middle, so that's why you should always be pretty cautious about having everything in the same plane. Now, of course, with the right hand polarity and left hand polarity, that's another thing, we've touched on that, but just so that you understand why you don't point your antenna at your model, why it should always be vertical, and to be perfectly honest, in video receivers and video transmitters, this is the worst kind of antenna you can have. This is good for about 30 meters, that's 90 feet, 100 feet. Not going to work. Past that, it's Murphy's Law whether it does or not. So I would strongly suggest you toss these things in the rubbish. Now, the other trap with them is, of course, as I'm trying to show you here, is inside that black plastic tube, you really don't know what you've got. Unless you cut these things open and have a look, you can have a real mixture. Now, this is a 2.4 gigahertz antenna. This came off a internet router in the house, obviously, and I don't know if you're like me, you tend to accumulate these damn things. And when I pulled this one apart, this is quite a surprising one. This is the base loaded antenna. I don't know why that spring's there, it's got no idea, but anyway, someone probably thought it was going to help. I really doubt that it does, but when you pull this thing apart, look how well that thing was put together. I don't know if we can get that to focus or not. I'm going to try and bring it up there, but that's just a bird's nest of the shielding. I mean, obviously that wire is supposed to be straight. You can see it's got a pretty solid kink in it here, and that distance there should be about 25 to 28 millimeters. Remember, it's 2.4 gigahertz, so the wavelength is pretty much half or double the length of 5.8. The higher the frequency, the shorter the wave. But imagine when you put that together, as they've stuck it together, it only goes in so far, and then they've stuffed that in there so it sort of sticks there. There's nothing else holding it, that's all just with friction. That type of antenna will bring your quad to the ground, or you'll blow your video transmission out the back door. Please don't use antennas or rubber duck antennas in any circumstances. Not even this thing. This thing is a piece of shit. No matter what anybody says, it's only going to take you out to about 30 meters. Then you get this other one. This is quite an interesting one. This is really a patch antenna. Again, it's 2.4 gigahertz, it's not 5.8, and I can tell that because you combine the length of that to that, and it should be about 25 to 28 millimeters, and that would be right. Now this thing, if we were to sit this here, this would have a radiating pattern like that. So you can see it gets rid of that dimple, but it only works if you're antenna, which you can't see. Remember, this thing is stuck inside a rubber cover, so you've got no idea what's in there. So we've got a nice big signal radiating out here at 2.4, remember, not 5.8, so this is still no good. But what we've got out of the side of this patch out here is nothing. You see when I put that there? Behind here, this area here, there's nothing. Zero. Yes, we picked up the gap there, but we've got nothing here. So if you were to fly this antenna by mistake on your goggles or whatever, if your quad ever got beside you or even come around and went over the top, because remember, there's nothing coming out of the top of this antenna, it's dead, it's blind. This radiates in this form here only. You're in deep shit. So please, please, if you've got one of these rubber duck antennas on your video transmitter or on your goggles, dump it. Go away, buy yourself a couple of these things or make them, and if you want to make them, have a look at that rcexplorer.se page. Very simple. David's done some great videos there, and you can really tune your video transmission into perfection. Now, the other thing I just wanted to run over with you guys is this is garden variety quad, and let's assume, for instance, that we can mount the antenna in here because our video transmitter's up the front near the camera and everything sits in there nice, and that looks really cool. That's a good Fat Shark antenna. Shit, this thing here should kick ass. It's going to be good stuff. Now imagine, and I'll just have to move the camera around here a bit. Imagine that we're flying along, and as we fly along we get up like that. Can you see the antenna? Because I certainly can't. It's gone. Where it's gone is it's shielded now by the model. Now if we come into the straight flying attitude, it's pretty good. But imagine that even if we're level and our machine's up here, pardon the light, I'll try and block that out. Again, we've just shielded the antenna completely. Now, there are a few things we can do about this. We can mount the antenna on the back, right, and have it there. So if we were to fly around whatever, that gives us a pretty good coverage. But where we die in the bum there is if we're coming back towards ourselves here. Machine's cocked over, it's looking good. Machine goes back into the reverse type attitude, or even if it's level, remember, and we said, move the camera again, machine's up here, it's above us where it normally is, we've just blanketed out our antenna again. So the worst place you can mount your antenna is, where is it? There it is on top of your machine. But there's another problem there, you see, because if we flip the machine upside down, the best place to mount your antenna is hanging off the bottom. Imagine this. I'll try and do it without getting hands in the way. Imagine that our antenna can sort of hang around here, right? It's very hard to, I'll have to do it like that. Imagine, here's our quad. Now, no matter where we go, up high, get above us, that antenna's always visible. See, no matter what the orientation is, this is the best place to hang your antenna. But there's a problem, obvious, isn't there? Come into land, bang, antenna's going to hit the ground. So there's a real poofter trying to get that to work. Now what I've done is I use a little servo here, and I'm mounting now my antenna onto one of these little lightweight servos. So what I get, man, this is hard to show, but you can imagine it here. When I flick the switch, this goes down, hangs down, flick a switch, up it comes. So if you can imagine, again, move things around here a little bit, we can have our antenna sitting out the back of the machine like so, and that's to land and take off or whatever we do when we're nice and close. And then as soon as we get the machine up in the air, flick the switch, the antenna goes down and hangs down below the machine. No matter really where I fly this thing, that antenna is never ever going to be shielded. Now if you've got a camera and a gimbal hanging under here, which you can have in some of the bigger models, you can say, oh, the bloody antenna gets in the way if I pan around. Well, that's okay. When you get to where you're going to take your photo or take your video, normally you're stationary, you've got your machine set in one place. Flick the switch, lift the antenna up. Down here, your gimbal is doing all its work, taking all your video. You're not really moving it around. It's very rare you fly it around violently while you're shooting that video. And again, as soon as you're finished, put your antenna down. There we go. I keep getting the hand in the way, but